All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today to this webinar, Turning ERP Risks into Opportunities. So we have a jam-packed session of 30 minutes today. And we can start with a little introduction to who we are in this webinar, and I can go first. So my name is Tobias Jansson, work as a senior customer success manager here at Rect. Has been doing this for about 4 years. So I've seen a lot of different projects in a lot of different industry, and it's very exciting with quality assurance, if you ask me. And with me today, I have Senior Project Manager Søren Kold, who's joining us and which I will be interviewing. So Søren, maybe you can introduce yourself briefly before we dive into today's topic.
Thank you, Tobias. Yes, my name is Søren Kold. I'm coming from a company called Overblik in Denmark. I've been working with ERP systems, optimizations, and upgrades, installations for the past 28 years.
Nice. Yeah, so that's more than my 4 years of experience within the business. So I'm really glad to have you in this webinar to talk a little bit about ERP risks. During the session, you'll be able to ask questions throughout the presentation, and then in the end, we'll try to get to those towards the end. But before we dive into the actual interview, I want to go ahead and briefly talk about RecTest, who we are. So if we can start by introducing our tool, we are a software that makes quality assurance as easy as possible. And it is a tool that is used when customers are facing complex implementations when it comes to systems such as Infor, IFS, SAP, or dynamic products, where you as an organization want to manage requirements, testing, and bug reports in one simple tool. So our system is developed for you to be able to collaborate with vendors and project members in a single solution. And it allows you essentially to follow the progress of the project and to give sign off on deliveries when you work with these complex implementations. If we look at a few of our customers, you can see many of them are from the food and beverage industry, and what they all do have in common is that they work closely with the business, and they've decided they need a comprehensive tool to manage the project within RecTest. And it also needs to be an easy tool to use with a low barrier of entry. So you can see many food and beverage companies here, but we operate across all industries. I think before we start talking about your specific role and what you've seen through your experience and your specific project that we're going to talk about today, I want to quickly touch upon some of the risks that we do see in ERP projects throughout the history. And I think some of them that I've seen working with many customers or potential customers in the past is that I see some clear risks when it comes to implementing such complex systems, such as missing to align the requirements with the goals, so buy-in from top management. You underestimate a pre-study, so you repeat old processes, which you then miss to test. You might not get the business involved, which I think is a key aspect when it comes to ERP projects. And from a PM perspective, it's easy to lose it's easy to lose control over the large numbers of processes, requirements, and testing that is involved. I don't know if you agree, Søren, what you've seen, and what's your take on risks in ERP projects?
Absolutely. One of the key focus that I always have in these big projects is the top management have to be they have to be a front runner for the project. They have to be able to communicate why it's so important to do these projects inside the company, and they have to be involved in finding the key employees that have to be involved, and they need to make time for them to be involved in these projects because they are always important for the company's future. And then again, we need to keep the focus on the future, not just changing things one to one, because then our investment in the project will never pay back. So we have to look into the future as well.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you there. I think many tend to repeat old processes and just replace what you have today, which is one of the things that you do want to focus on the future, as you're saying. How can we make things more efficient? How can we make things better? So take the project as an opportunity to improve, is my take as well.
Definitely.
Excellent. Well, I think many of the key points that you're going to talk about today is some of the success factors, which I find very interesting and that you come up with here. And we can go through them one by one. And I think you touched upon the first one here already, which is organization. That's one of the success factors that you mentioned. If you could repeat some of that and talk a little bit about that specific success factor.
Yeah, you need to have a goal with your project, and this goal have to be clear to everybody. And also the priority of the project have to be clear for everybody. So you need to use time on it, and this time have to be freed up. And we need the best employees to go through with these projects. We cannot just take a replacement or something like that. We need the very best, and to free them up, that is a top management assignment to do that.
Yeah. And when you say free up, specifically potentially then dedicated time for these employees, alongside with their regular work duties as well, right?
That is correct, yes. And if we are looking at it from the top of course, when you're talking about the resources, you need somebody from all the key areas that is involved in this project. And these big projects are normally covering the whole company. So it can be quite a large group of people that have to be involved. And for them to be involved and we are not losing up times, then we are fixing the time slots where we are working with, so people knows that they are actually uh, um, uh, uh, occupied in these time slots, and somebody else have to cover for them in the daily work.
Yeah.
Um, so that is very important to find out who can replace these key individuals in the daily work in the company, because it's a lot of hours that you have to put in to make sure that things is going right the first time.
Yeah, yeah, understand. And I couldn't agree more. So specifically when we talk about resources, we were touching on it a little bit with, planned time slots, the very, very best people, key individuals. Would you say it's across the entire business? What does a success factor look like among resources?
First of all, we can talk a little bit about not making the process of this project too complicated. So we have a goal, we have a plan, we have a test phase, and we have some education that have to go on before we are going live with a new system. But you also have to make sure that people are not getting unsecure in the whole process. So you have to make sure that everybody knows what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and you have to be supportive to them. So if they are in doubt what to do, then you can step in and help them directly. Otherwise, you will create a lot of nervous vibrations in the organization and some resistance. So we want to avoid the resistance and let people see the opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, they need to be when you mention opportunities, they need to see the opportunities. They need to be involved and maybe feel like they are contributing to the improvement of the business as well, to give them the mandate to make changes and drive the business forward.
Correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think you were talking about just process just now. I think we're going to dive into this specifically on the project that we're going to talk about today. And you mentioned a few things where you want to plan it, you want to have your goal definition, your testing and whatnot. Also about maybe not complicating the process too much. What do you think about that?
That is correct. And one of the things is also to keep the project as short as possible, so people don't forget what is the goal of this project. And when big companies is diving into these big changes, it's because they can see the benefit of what is on the other side. So we need to get these through as fast as we possibly can.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds good. So keep it simple, keep it short, and have the key people involved see the benefits of the outcome in the end to keep it on track. And if we think about the tools around such a ERP transformation, is quite a big complex project. What do you reckon is some good help there when it comes to tools supporting the transformation?
I'm myself a very visual man, so whenever we're coming into this big project, to make sure that I keep the overview, I'm normally drawing up the whole process of the company, from when you start talking to the customer until the customer have the product and have paid us, in order not to miss a little corner in the system where we forgot to test something. So I'm normally making a visual plan, and I'm also using that for the communication to the rest of the company, so
Mhm.
people know where to work, what to work, and what is their area of responsibility. Then
Yeah.
we of course need a test system, so we can test that everything is going correct and we have set things up correctly. And finally, but most importantly, is a tool to keep track of all the settings that we need to do, all the education that we need to do, all the tests we need to do, and all the bugs and problems that we are encountering in the process. So a tool like RecTest, which I've used in a couple of projects, is very helpful. Also because RecTest is a very user-friendly system.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I agree. I might be biased on that point, but I certainly agree. It's a lot to organize when it comes to leading such a big project, visualizing the processes and the workflows, keeping track of all the testing activities and also educational, also keeping track of any potential bugs that you go through and correct and retest. So yeah, it sounds like a lot to keep track on. And yeah, we're going to come into that, get into that a little bit later on as well. But we're going to go ahead and jump into talking about your most recent project. And this is where we got first acquainted, was through Espersen's successful ERP project that you led. And I'm just going to briefly mention that Espersen is the leading fish producer in Denmark that recently did a large ERP project, which you led. And if we jump into the specific project, before you mention a bit about the actual project, did you see any specific challenges for this particular one regarding organization or the system implemented or the industry as a whole?
Definitely.
Mm.
And you forgot to mention it was not only one project we
Oh,
did for
yeah.
this Espersen, it was several projects. But
Yeah.
let's start with the first project that we work with. And
Mm.
of course, whenever you're working inside the food and beverage industry, there is
Yeah.
some really key points. There is traceability on all your ingredients. There is the testing of your products. There is the whole flow in the factory, because a factory like the Espersen factory here was working 24 hours and 7 days a week, and it have complex processes with cooking, unfreezing, freezing things, and to stop that production, that is really difficult, and to transfer information about traceability from first system to the next system, and then complicated even more because they were working together with several other factories. So
Mm.
this complexity between an old system and new system into one big factory with 700 workers on. That was a scary project.
Yeah, I can imagine. Would you say that the food and beverage industry, if we look at an ERP system, is it even more complex when you make such a change or upgrade within the food and beverage industry compared to other industries, perhaps even?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because you cannot afford to miss any information here. Then you're cooked, so to
Yeah.
say.
Yes. Yeah, no, I understand. All right. Well, it sounds like you were up for quite the challenge when you took on this project, not just because of the industry and the complexity around it, but I think it'll be really interesting to hear how you managed these particular success factors that we talked about tied back to this particular project and how it succeeded. So we're actually going to break it down into those success factors and look at them isolated against this Esperson project. And if we start with organization, what how did you manage that in this complexity that we just spoke about?
As a standard in projects, and I know a lot of project managers are sitting out there and nodding now. Yeah, you have a steering committee with a limited number of members that have to make sure that we have all the resources, both economical and
Mhm.
ours, in for our key employments. And then we had a project team with some 10, 15 people representing all the functionalities in the company. And each of these key individuals had their own sub teams teams behind them, where they discussed the functionality, delegated all the tests and other tasks that we had in the project. And then on side of it all, we had a software company supporting us as well. And
Yeah.
in total, I think we were 60, 80 people directly involved in the project during the phase. So it was a huge organization.
Yeah. So the key here is to get the right people involved and appointed maybe by top management. If they have freed up time dedicated for the project, then that was the key here in this rollout as well.
Yeah. And then again, inside the organization itself, it was also my responsibility to ensure that the commitment was there for the people. So there was a lot of communication and making sure that people knew what their task was and how they should do it and what the mandate to make decision was for each of those people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And specifically around the resource that I think you touched upon this a little bit in terms of it being 60 to 80 people involved. And there was a steering committee, core project team. Anything more to say on that point for this particular
Yeah,
project?
the fixed meeting schedules, so
Mm.
people knew when to work on the projects and when to do the daily work. That was very important as well. So
Yeah.
that was one more thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a kind of a follow-up question on that. When it comes to dedicated work, would you say it was, hours, a full day of the week, or was it dedicated hours? And then did they have, people filling in for their regular duties during this project time?
I'm very careful not to remove key people from the daily work. They
Yeah,
need to keep in trip of what is going on during
yeah,
these months that we are working. So we keep them in the daily work and free them up around 30, 40% of their time where their colleagues are covering for their jobs in the
yeah,
meantime.
yeah,
So morning or an afternoon in 2 or 3 days. We're working together in groups, and then a morning or an afternoon in 1 or 2 days is where they do the job for themselves, where they work with the project but not in the project group in itself.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And I think that's very important. And I hear that from many other customers that, dedicated time that is not added on top of your 100% already, but rather realigned so that you have time for both activities. So that makes a lot of sense. And the last, not the last one, but one of the things that we talk about is also process. In this particular project, how did you manage that?
In order to understand the full project, we were actually changing from SAP to MoveX M3.
Mhm.
And it was a decision from the beginning of the company that they want to run on M3. So it is very complex, this. And when we coming into that, then we of course had a very tight schedule on how to do that. We need to configure the system. We need to define and perform the tests, and we need also both the key employee and the end user to receive some education. And the
Mhm.
education was done first to the key employee, and then the key employee did the final education of the end user in order to give them even more training in the system. Because when you're seeing the complication from two sides, both from the one that want to learn something and getting the questions from those that needs to learn something, then you have two different perspectives, and you're getting a lot better to the system when you're starting answer question yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is a slide that you provided to us in regards to the process overview. And I understand this is from Visio. Could you elaborate on this particular one a little bit?
Yes, this is a normal swim lane flow chart
Mhm.
where I've documented all the processes that is in this company, not only on this factory, but also when the factories are working together, because you're moving things around in the whole system. And in this case, it was also a drawing on how systems actually could interact with the informations. And in order to not miss a small corner, I need this kind of overview. And also when I'm communicating where we're working now, where is the problems now, then you can pinpoint it on this kind of flow charts. And you can see
Yeah.
if if it's drilled in to the flow charts. We're not going to do that. Yeah, we can do that a little bit, but you will see that it's a connection through the whole system. So if you break one link, the system have failed. So therefore, we need the full overview of where to go next step when you're
Yeah.
testing things. And what we did was on every single little box that we had is a process, and this process was connected into the rec test to identify who was responsible for testing this area, who was responsible for setting up this area, who was responsible for education in this area, who was responsible for uh, the tasks that we had to do in the process of going live with the new system. That we had a short window of a weekend to
Mhm.
change from one system to another system. That was the amount of days that we could close down the production. So that was really a lot. I think in total we had 2,400 test cases inside rec
Wow.
test for the
Yeah.
different parts that we need to keep track on in a very high level, both in high level but also in the details,
Mhm.
and to make sure that things was connected and planned in the right sequence as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a large amount of tests that you need to keep track of, and I imagine getting a good overview of that, then to have a tool, and in this case, like Rectest, to support that overview and progress was monumental to get it over the line during that window of opportunity, if you will.
And if you see the blue circle that I have
Mhm.
around this R07, that was actually the connection between the rec test and our process overview. So we could always define where we were, what was we doing, and in what kind of the link in the process was this connected.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, got it. Um, and I think, yeah, one of the things that we did talk about, and now you talked about it a little bit more about the tools. So you did have the process and the ID, and you had that connected to the process overview. The tool itself being then rec test for the testing activities and the bug handling. Those were the main two tools used, and I assume training and educational environments from the vendor.
No, that was internal in the company. So it
Okay.
was
Oh yeah.
a test version where we could test all the configuration was set correctly. So every time we have done something in a live system, we copy it down into a test environment, and then we were sure that things was working as they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the Visual, the Microsoft Visual as the overall drawings and visual overview, and
Mm.
then rec test to keep track of all the details because there was a lot of details.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I can imagine that. So, to summarize kind of how you then used it, your specific main focus when it comes to tying it back to Rectus was for the testing processes and the education of users, as well as the bug reporting. I just want to highlight that there's also the ability to work with the requirements in Rectest, where you plan and prioritize when these processes should be worked on, what those requirements are, and tie them to the testing. So you could do it both with Rectest and Visio, and I think it's a good combination of using both when it comes to this type of project.
We did use the requirement a little bit, but the main focus was on the testing and the bug solving. Yeah,
Yeah,
and Rectest was perfect for that because we could send these bugs in direction of our own support team or the software consultants team or whoever needed to that to solve the bugs or the problems that we
yeah,
had.
yeah. Yeah, no, I hear that from other, not just ERP projects, but there's a large number. Some can be just configuration, some are real bugs, but getting that overview of prioritizing the bugs and getting them assigned to the correct people with the help from Rectus is one of the major benefits that we've heard about, seen, and now you're testifying to that as well. So that is great. I think one last point that I want to talk about before we kind of give our final tips, and that is in terms of the maintenance phase. You do go live. How did you handle this transition into maintenance? Once you gone live, or business as usual, if you will.
And the whole process, we had this team for representing all the functionalities. There were also a kind of supporting teams beside the normal supporting teams. And what we did in the transition from testing to go live was that we had a 3 weeks period afterwards where we had the hypercare, where both the normal supporting team and this project team
Yeah.
was working side by side to solve whatever problem was popping up in the live system. And we had fixed that for 3 weeks. And after that, all the open cases was handed over to the normal supporting team.
Mm.
Otherwise, you risk that these projects are never ending because there is still a problem in the live system. But
Yeah.
you have actually past that point when
Yeah.
you're live, you need to have this handled inside your normal organization.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think that's a good key takeaway for others as well, to involve the people that we manage the system towards the end of the project, so it becomes kind of a natural transition over to them. So once you go live and they own it. And I think one of the things that we'll probably talk about in other webinars is the maintenance phase and reusing of all these test documentation and in the upgrades that are inevitably to come. But if I know we're on time now, so if you would just please summarize some key takeaways for us, Søren, here, and we'll start with the first one.
Yeah, that was the defining of the goals and the success criteria, and definitely when is the project ending. So the end point have to be defined already from the start off.
Yeah, that is good. And then the second one about the resources.
Yeah. Make sure that you have plenty of resources, the right resources, and they are freed up so they are not getting stressed and falling out of the project. Very important part.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the third one about the tools.
Yeah, for everybody to work smoothly in a project, make sure that you have a user-friendly software that can keep track of your task and your bugs and the responsible person and deadlines, so they know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And when there are coming problems, we know exactly how to solve these and who should solve these problems. And you have the learning from the set up to the training to the testing and then into the live situation, and you have all the bugs so you can learn from that, see have we had anything similar in this area at this point. So you will learn a lot from having this user-friendly tools. And with RecTest it's also very visible, and you can make overview reports that is really nice to present to the management.
Great, great. And the last
And
point now.
yeah, um, do remember please to estimate whatever load you have for the single people so they know what is expected from them, and start tracking the workload so you can see how far are we into the process. If you don't have an idea of how many hours you're gonna need, and you don't know how many hours you actually have spent, you will never learn to the next project.
Perfect. Well, great. Thank you so much for this, Søren. It was great to have you on this call. I think if you can stick around, and for anybody in the audience that wants to stick around, I know we're on time, but we do have a Q&A. If there are any questions here towards the end, I'm going to just check and see we have anything that we can answer. Here's a great question from a member of the audience, and that is testing necessary when buying a standard solution? What would you say about
Absolutely,
that?
because no matter what kind of standard solution you're buying, and it's really not important what kind of standard solution you're buying. The important thing by a standard solution is how you are actually setting it up to work for your company, and you need to test that always.
Always test. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. It's on the customer and the organization in the end to test that the solution works, even though could be more or less standardized. It needs to work for you, and the responsibility is in your lap, if you will. Um, Great. Well, if there's any other questions, we're gonna go ahead and then follow them up with an email afterwards, so you get your questions answered. Again, I want to thank you, Søren, for taking the time to speak with me today. It was a great pleasure having you. And the recording will be sent out to everybody that attended or signed up. So yeah, if you have questions, you can reach out to myself. Uh, Reach out to Søren. I'm throwing it out there for you now if there are any questions directly to you. And I'll be able to facilitate any kind of talks with Søren as well if you reach out to me. So thank you everyone for listening in, and have a